It's a very warm welcome to the Global Sports Channel once again to our friend over in Ireland, Nicci Daly. Nicci, welcome back to the Global Sports Channel.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you here. And I tell you what, there's been a lot happen in the world since you and I last spoke, hasn't there?
There has, yeah.
Well, it's great to have you back on the show, and today we're going to be talking about your wonderful experience in the Tokyo Olympic Games. But before we start, I've got another question to ask you that's completely irrelevant to that particular topic, but been dying to ask you this all day. So I wanted to know what you think of George Russell going to the Mercedes Formula One team next year.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's great news. I think, it's going to be exciting next year with, Russell and Hamilton. I actually just read an article last night from a quote from Russell saying, Mercedes have told him that it's a level playing field, which is nice to hear now. It's, obviously that can all change as it goes, but it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic between Lewis and Russell. And Alex Albon's back as well at Williams, so it's another
Exactly. And it's good that you read the propaganda that's coming out from Mercedes already about how it's going to be a level playing field and all the rest of it. It's going to be... do you remember the old days with the Hamilton and Alonso? I think we're going to go back and revisit that all over again. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's so exciting. I think the changes for next year as well with the regulations. I mean, I just can't wait to see how it all kind of unfolds. But I hope Russell really gives Hamilton a good go.
Yeah, exactly right. A little bit disappointed I am in Alex Albon getting that seat at Williams, because I did put my hat in the ring and unfortunately it wasn't selected. So I'll have to wait another year before I can get onto the Formula One grid. But yeah, good to see Alex back, and he's had a year away playing around in the DTM car series, so I'm sure he'll be happy to be back in the single-seaters. And I think Williams are going to turn into a bit of a surprise package next year. I only see them going forward from where they are now, don't you reckon?
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, I think Russell has kind of brought forward a lot with what he's managed to achieve there. And I think Albon going in there should, again, he's a quality driver. So you'd hope to see them maybe push on a little bit more next year with the new regulation changes.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, if you've just tuned into the show and you're expecting to hear about a Tokyo Olympic Games conversation, we've just been talking about Formula One for a couple of minutes. So now we can start talking about the Olympic Games. And Nicci, you were one of the very few people that got to experience the Tokyo Olympics this year, Olympics like none other before. And I'm sure that was an incredible experience. But before we start talking about your journey at the Games, how about you tell us about the lead up to the Games, and how was it for you from an athlete point of view getting ready to go to this particular Olympic Games? It was your first, correct?
Yeah, it was our first time ever qualifying for the Olympics. So we were, we had no real idea what we were kind of going over to. And then obviously it was a COVID Olympics, but I suppose having not been there before in a normal Olympics, we really didn't know any different. So we had nothing to compare it to. But for preparations leading up, we were lucky in the sense that we got to have a European Championships a month before. So we got like that kind of tournament practice, which we hadn't had since 2019, which is a long time ago. We've had a couple of test matches and here and there, but really, a tournament is really how you kind of get the best preparation leading into a tournament like Tokyo. We were lucky that, we managed to kind of cope with COVID quite well on the lead up to the Olympics. And, we didn't have any cases within our group. We didn't have any issues with, having to cancel trips or cancel any training camps or anything like that. So I'd say, things considered, we got to do as much as we could have in the environment that we were in. I would say that we didn't really have any issues when it came to preparing for the Olympics.
Yeah, terrific. Now, for those of you that haven't caught up with Nicci on our show before. Nicci represented Ireland in field hockey at the Olympic Games, so she was talking about the lead-up events that they went to for field hockey. Now, one of the things, Nicci, is I wanted to know, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will like to know what happened prior to the Games in terms of the protocols and how it was communicated to you and the teammates about what was actually going to happen, what you were going to be responsible for when you got to Tokyo, and how everything was going to be managed around COVID. Did you get very clear communication, both from your sports bodies and also from the Olympic movement about that?
Yeah, we did. I mean, they would host kind of webinars every Wednesday, and it was like a COVID protocol update on what was happening, and it just went through everything, from the time you arrive in Tokyo, what your protocol is, depending on where you're going to have your holding camp, and then from entering into the village, what it was going to be like day to day, what you can do, what you can't do, and then from going to the village then to your venue. So yeah, they were very clear on how it was going to unfold for us, and what the protocols would be. And I think that we did absolutely everything we could in terms of keeping it as a safe Olympics as possible. And thankfully, again, we didn't have any cases, and I think the positivity rate from the reports that I saw were relatively low, all things considered. So I think that it was an enormous undertaking to have it in a pandemic, and especially when the cases were quite high in Tokyo and Japan around that time. But I do think, keeping us inside the village, keeping us contained, definitely, helps not spreading it outside the community in Tokyo.
Mm. And what about vaccinations? Was the team vaccinated before you went to Tokyo?
Yeah, we were fully vaccinated. So Sport Ireland, our governing body here, they made sure that all the Olympic athletes were fully vaccinated before we left for Tokyo. So we actually spent nearly 2 weeks in a holding camp in Iwate, which is 7 hours north of Tokyo, but very remote. So we didn't actually, there was nobody else staying in the hotel other than us, and we were tested every single day. And the other kind of general protocols around washing your hands and wearing a mask were fairly strictly put in place. We weren't allowed to go anywhere without our masks. We weren't allowed to go anywhere without our hand sanitizers. So yeah, I think we were very diligent with the protocols, and we knew we had to be, because nobody wanted to be ruled out of a match or ruled out of a tournament, and nobody obviously wanted to spread it.
Yeah, exactly. What about the any of the girls have any reactions to the vaccine before they left?
No, I mean, I think nothing other than the side effects of bit of a temperature, kind of not feeling great for the day after, but then after that, kind of got back to normal.
So no sore arms, because I would imagine that having a sore arm when you're throwing around a hockey stick could be a bit of a problem, yeah? So no one had a sore arm?
No, well, I mean, yeah, they had probably just that kind of bruised feeling for a couple of hours, but I think we planned the vaccinations on a day where we weren't training, so people could kind of recover and then start back training again.
Yeah. Now, I spoke to you before you went to the Games, and I'm really interested to know now, after you've been, in terms of that excitement level of, actually getting on the plane and heading off to Tokyo. How were you emotionally when it came to, wheels up at Dublin Airport and off to Tokyo?
Yeah, I think I was so excited, obviously, like everyone was, but in particular, I suppose I wanted to make sure I enjoyed every single moment. And there's been times where you've been on trips where you don't really take it all in, and it's just another tournament, it's just another one. But I knew that the Olympics was going to be the biggest one, the most special, and I was never going to go to another one. So really making sure that I was kind of like in the present moment as much as possible to take it all in and to experience and enjoy every little bit about it. And that kind of started with taking 5 million videos and 6,000 pictures. So yeah, I think personally, I really enjoyed every single moment that I was there.
Yeah.
It was probably the best hockey trip I've been on. So.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about the competition itself. And once you landed in Japan, you said you were isolated in a hotel. How did the whole training process occur for you and the team, and how long was it before you played your first match from when you got there?
So we got there on the 9th. Was it the 9th? I can't remember the dates now. Yeah, I think we left on like late on the 7th and got there early on the 9th. So when we got to Iwate, we'd obviously kind of travelled for quite a long time. We'd been on a bus for 7 hours. We had the jet lag and the time difference. So we really just sort of eased ourselves in. We were the only team there, so we were the only people using the pitch. We got a lovely welcoming ceremony from the Iwate people when we arrived. They put on like a dance show and, kind of their own authentic thing from their region and stuff. So that was really cool. And then we just gradually built into our training, just picked it up slowly, made sure everyone kind of got over the jet lag, didn't push the bodies too soon. And we were feeling really good, kind of leaving Owate, heading into the village on the 19th of July. So we were there for like 10 days. And then we entered the village on the 19th. We played 2 practice games before playing our first match on the 24th. So we had, we got to experience playing a match in the heat before the competition actually started.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was going to talk about that because us armchair Olympic spectators were looking at all the athletes suffering in the heat of Tokyo, and it looked fairly oppressive, particularly if you're a marathon runner. It wasn't a good place to run a marathon, that's for sure. But how did it affect your sport in particular, field hockey?
Yeah, I think it was tough. The heat was. I've never experienced anything like it. Especially for our daytime games when the sun was beating down. It wasn't quite as overcast maybe as we expected it to be. It was bright blue skies and the sun was shining. And then on top of the humidity, it was really quite unbearable at times. And obviously coming from where we're from, we're not used to it at all. So yeah, like we definitely at times struggle in the heat. I think there's probably plenty of pictures going around where we're all sticking our faces into ice cold buckets of water and just trying to cool down as quickly as possible. But we actually practiced a lot of heat strategies before we left. And we had, our physiologist would have these core temperature pills that we'd swallow, and there'd be a chip in it that would connect to a device, and it would be able to show you what your core temperature was and
Wow.
how quickly you were reduce your core temperature, or if you weren't managing to reduce it at all. So we were kind of like we knew we would struggle or suffer, but we had kind of strategies to kind of help us to do as well as to adapt as well as we could to the heat.
Yeah, that's fantastic technology. Was that widespread throughout the hockey community? Did other teams have that technology as well?
I'm not really sure. I was quite impressed with it because we started using it before we went. We'd be in the heat chambers doing kind of conditioning sessions and things like that. So we'd be able to, practice what our routine would be like. We'd have, these slushies made up that were like ice, ice cold Lucozade drinks with crushed ice in them. And we'd practice sort of what the routine would be like from getting to the pitch to doing your warm up to getting to the start of the match, half time, end of or each quarter, and he just went through all of the data of what it looks like and what he'd hope for it to look like, what your core temperature should look like in terms of going up and then being able to come straight back down again. And so we were kind of, trying different things in order to make that happen so that we could, adapt to the heat as best we could.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I'm sure there's some girls in the team that handle the heat better than others, because whenever you're in a team, you've all got different physiological reactions to heat and cold. So was that the case as well? You found that some of the girls cope better than others?
Yeah, I think definitely. And like I know for a fact Aisha, our goalkeeper, really did struggle, but I mean that's obviously because she's got all that gear on her as well, and it's there's no escaping the heat. It's just like a furnace standing inside all that gear. And we kept her busy at times as well in the goal. So yeah, like I think there was a couple of games where she came off again, like struggling to cool down, and then after the game, kind of suffering a little bit of almost heat stroke or something like that. So yeah, like people did suffer in different ways, but overall, it was you just kind of had to, I don't know, grin and bear and just get through it as best you could.
Get on with it. We're seeing in the US Tennis Open at the moment, a lot of the players are having trouble just holding on to their rackets because of the sweaty, humid conditions in New York at the moment. Were you having the same problems with your hockey stick? Were you getting slippery hands that bad that it's difficult to hold on to the stick?
Yeah, and again, it was another thing that we kind of we foreseen happening. So we were like, okay, this is going to happen. What are we going to do about it? And we spoke to an ex-international Japanese hockey player, and he kind of gave us a few tips around, look, you're going to be sweating so much, from even your clothes kind of dripping with sweat to your feet being sweaty. And he gave us these tips of, at halftime actually changing our gear so that we're not carrying around all the weight of the sweat. And same with our shoes, like change your shoes at halftime, change socks. But then he also introduced us to this sticky spray that you spray on your grip so that your hands don't slip. Because a lot of people use like chamois grips, but again, they're just going to get wet and end up slipping anyway. So we kind of had this, it was like a sticky spray that you just put on your hands and you can put on your grip, and it actually helped quite a lot.
As a player, are you allowed to use more than one stick in a game? Are you allowed to rotate your sticks?
Yeah, you can if you want. Not something that would be like commonly done, purely because, unless you've kind of broken a couple of sticks, you tend to go with the one that's nicely broken in and not too new or too old.
Yeah. So again, we see tennis players walking out with a bag full of tennis rackets. Do we see this on the hockey field as well? Are players walking out with 3 or 4 sticks at a time?
Yeah, that's quite common. Yeah, people would have 2 or 3 sticks, just in case something happens. One or, like that. If you have one in your grips, usually if it is wet or something in your grip is quite soggy, you could just take another stick and go with it. So yeah, it's common enough to have a couple of sticks.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, tell us about some of the matches. Let's talk about the first game. And who did you play, and what was the kind of feeling of the team before you went into the match? Did you feel as though you had a good chance to win?
Yeah, so our first game was South Africa, and that was a target game for us. We had targeted South Africa and India as the 2 games that we felt if we won would get us out of the group. So yeah, we started really well against South Africa. We obviously beat them, and we felt we played quite well, and kind of set us off on the right track. But then we went on and played Holland in the second game, and that was a different story. So, but we weren't really planning on getting anything out of the Dutch game, so we lost. We actually played quite well again against Holland. We kept them at bay for quite a long time. I think we lost 4-0 in the end, but I think they only scored their goals in the last quarter. So we kind of kept them at bay for quite a bit of the match, and then Holland, they're the best in the world, so they're able to kind of turn the screw whenever they want. And then we played Germany again. We played really good hockey against Germany, and we were on a comeback. We were down like 4-1 or something like that, and we brought it back to, I think it was 4-1, brought it back to 4-2, or 3-2. I can't really remember the goals and the sequence they went. But we played some really good hockey against them, and we were lucky not to get something out of it. I think for the effort that we put in and the kind of hockey that we ended up playing and the pressure that we put them under, it would have been nice to get something out of that game. And then India again, like that was our target game, but India were a lot stronger than we probably predicted. We hadn't seen them play, the last footage we had like 2019, I think. So they had come on a lot as a squad, and they'd gotten themselves a lot fitter than they normally would be. So they deservedly kind of went on and got to the semi-final, which is incredible. So we missed out on that target game, which meant we didn't advance out of the group, because we then lost to GB in the next game. So it was all very like, could have, one more result would have changed, the outcome for us. But that's fairly cruel. You got to get it right on, every time.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things in the Olympics, isn't it? It's a game of inches and centimetres sometimes, when it comes to, either progressing and in particular getting into the medals as well. I'm interested in one of the things that you said, though, in terms of this whole strategy around looking at some of these teams, thinking that they may be an opportunity for you to win versus some of the other teams. Do you think that's a sound strategy to kind of go, well, okay, we're not going to beat the Dutch, so I don't want to say you give up, but you don't look at it as a priority game that you think you've got a chance in? Do you think that's a good strategy?
No, I think like when I say it like that, it might sound like we don't plan or prepare for the other games. It's not quite like that. Like you do, and you're always trying. We scout every team the same, so we don't not scout Holland because we're not going to win, or we don't scout another team for longer, or do more in-depth analysis of them. It's the same. You look at their strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats, and we figure out where can we apply our strengths in each game, and that's like the focus on our game plan. But I think having, looking at teams where you think, okay, where do we level playing field? Where can we match up with most of these teams? Where can we kind of go, look, we have to get a result here. And you do kind of have to make sure you get things exactly right on those days and not kind of just go in and think, oh, it's just another game, or, you're not kind of looking at where you can make up the difference, say then against Holland or Germany or things like that. But no, we go in and we go in to win every single game. Like that is the goal. But yeah, like some teams are naturally enough going to be stronger in areas that you just can't.
Okay, yeah, understandable. So tell us about the venues. Did you play all your matches, all your games at the same venue?
Yeah, same venue. It was about 10, 15 minutes away from the village, so it was really handy for us. We didn't have any mad kind of travel issues or traffic issues or anything like that, so it was very easy to kind of commute there. Yeah, it was lovely. The stadium was incredible. All the pitches were played very much the same. So like your warm-up pitch and your training pitch and the main pitch were, really, really high quality pitches, which was makes such a difference.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what about the the spectators? Were there any spectators at all at any of your games? Zero.
No.
Okay.
No.
So how did that feel? Because I'm assuming that for your entire hockey career, you've been playing in front of spectators, and all of a sudden you have an empty Olympic stadium. How does that go? How does that feel?
Yeah, it was. To be honest, it didn't really feel that weird. I think maybe because we played all our practice matches in the lead up. We played the European Championships with no spectators pretty much. So yeah, it didn't feel. I don't know. I don't think I really noticed it, to be honest. When I think back to like the World Cup, yeah, the atmosphere was incredible. And maybe it would have been different had you got to sort of those crunch games like a quarterfinal or a semi-final where you really do notice the crowd and the occasion and stuff. But yeah, I don't think personally the occasion really didn't get to me, or like the lack of crowd really bothered me in any way.
Okay. So what was a day in the life of you in the Olympic Games like? Like what was your, let's say on a match day, how did you go about things? Were there special, did you have to do a COVID test, for instance, every day?
Oh yeah, every day, every single day we got.
Yep.
And then you just kind of go about your match day routine. We'd have a schedule when we'd eat, depending on when the time of the game is. Kind of work back on when you schedule your meals. So we'd do a mobility session in the morning just to kind of stretch and wake the body up and get it primed. We do a primer then to kind of just pump the muscles and get them ready to to go. So that kind of happens a couple hours before we leave for the match. And then just individual kind of prep. We'd have a briefing before the game, usually in the morning time, just go through just the points that we might have picked out as to where basically what the game plan is, but just sort of a condensed version of it. And then off the pitch, do your warm up. Yeah, you've got a whole routine, like minute by minute, that you follow in terms of when you walk out to the warm up pitch, when you put your GPS in, when you go and do your physical warm up, how long the physical warm up lasts, and then making your way back over to the main pitch, putting your gear on, doing your stick and ball warm up, going through then, there's different exercises in the stick and ball warm up, and everything is timed down to the last kind of minute or half a minute. And then line out and play. So probably sound like, to me it's like, oh, it's just another game. It's something that we've been doing for years, but there is planning and preparation as to how we go about each match day, and it is quite specifically timed out and planned out.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say it, and also how you say it's just like second nature to you, but to us it sounds like a military operation.
Yeah, it kind of is, I suppose, but it's just something that you get used to. And I think, the one thing, the only time you ever feel like it's different is when you go back to playing club hockey and you don't know what you're doing, because you get up and you're like, when am I going to eat? You just have to do all this myself. I have to plan, prepare, and, the field, and it's not as kind of, it's not run the same. It's like, oh, we go do our warm up now, or when will we go? And it's, it's a bit unnerving when you're like, oh no, somebody just, where's our plan? Like, where's the structure to do it all? And it makes such a difference. It's all part of your preparation, I suppose. And,
yeah, exactly. You're right. So what about in terms of the actual, protocols around getting to and from the village? Was it basically living inside a bubble, like you were put on a bus from the village, taken to the venue, and then taken back to the village again? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, and we didn't travel on a bus with anyone else. It was our own bus, and we had our same bus stop that we got on every day, whether it was for training or matches. And like that, you get to the venue, you get off, you do your training or play your match, you get back on, you go back to the village, and that was it. There was no kind of escaping the village any other way.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned earlier about the time of the games and that it was in the hot, brilliant sunshine. Was there no opportunity to play the games later in the day when it got a bit cooler?
Yeah, we had 2 games in the evening time.
Okay.
As did everyone. Yeah, I suppose they had to make it fair among the teams as to how many got to play in the day and how many got to play in the evening. But it was fairly similar for every team. The time frames that we played at. So.
I understand. So that last game where you didn't get out of the group stage and you came off the pitch, how was the emotions? What were you thinking about? That was my Olympic experience. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I suppose after the India game, when we knew, okay, we're not out. Like, we still have GB, we can still get a result against GB, and we were fairly positive. So, as much as it was disappointing not to get the result against India, we quickly kind of back and kind of got ourselves up and ready to go against GB, because we knew we could beat GB, and if we played, to the level that we know we can play, that anything would be possible against them. So after the India game, I didn't really feel like it was the end just yet, because I knew GB was coming up, and it wasn't like we were going to play Holland, where it's like, okay, chances are a lot lower. But then obviously the GB game, it was so close again. Really, could have gone either way. I think in that game, and then it really did hit, because that was the last game that I was personally going to play for Ireland, and it was going to be the last Olympic experience that I was going to have, and there was a lot of emotion. I got my 200 cap that day, which I was delighted about, because there was a time where I didn't even think I'd see 200, and certainly didn't think I'd be getting it at the Olympics. So it was a special way to kind of, I suppose, finish off my career. To get 200 caps and to do it at Olympics was special. There's a lot of emotions, both, be sad, yeah.
Well, congratulations, first of all, on the 200 caps. It's a fantastic honour for any sport, for any country. That's a well done on that one. In terms of the emotions, was it something that you had kind of thought about before going into the Olympics? Did you put any time into thinking about, you said you wanted to live in the now and get the most out of it, but did you already start to feel that, this is the end of my international hockey career? Was that a thought in your mind?
To be honest, it was a thought in my mind for many months before we even got to Tokyo, because I had a knee injury that was quite limiting, and I really wasn't sure if I was ever going to make Tokyo. So I actually thought that my last game was when we were in the Europeans, and I remember my mom being there, and the reason she came is because I really didn't feel confident that he was going to select me for the Olympics, purely because I hadn't really got to play a lot and my knee was not good, and I had a couple of injections in it, and then I didn't really play. He didn't play me an awful lot in the Europeans, and I just kind of felt that's it, that's the end for me. So yeah, at different times and many times I had that kind of, God, this could be my last, this could be my last, this could be my last. And I was quite like, yeah, it was tough emotionally, and it was quite draining to kind of constantly have those thoughts of, is this the end? And, you know, that kind of anxious feeling of not knowing whether I was going to go, or, you know, the Olympics had always been the dream, and that's where I wanted to see my career end. But obviously it wasn't guaranteed, and I didn't really feel confident that it would happen for me. So when I did get selected and I got on the plane to Tokyo, it was about enjoying every single moment, because I knew then the end really was going to be the GB game, or whatever, you know, the last game that we played.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because a lot of sports fans don't know the emotional roller coaster that athletes go through around that selection process to represent their country at Olympic Games. And you know, we read in the press, the small amounts of press that cover that kind of topic, about how difficult it is for a lot of athletes who don't get selected and they end up staying at home. And you know, there's a lot of mental health issues that result from that process as well. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because you yourself were on the, I guess, the precipice, and you spoke to me before you left and talked about your injury, and said that you hoped your body got yourself through the games, and it did. So well done to you on there. Did the body live up to its expectations for you, or did you find it really hard going with the injuries?
Yeah, it was. It was quite hard. After the first practice game, again, I was quite worried as to whether I'd even make it through the whole of the campaign at the Olympics. And after the first practice game, my knee swelled up quite badly, and I struggled to kind of get the swelling down after that. There was kind of fluid stuff like in the joint, and the movement became quite sore. You know, before warming up, walking up and down stairs actually was kind of the worst, where the injury was, the kind of weight bearing part of the joint. And so anytime I kind of loaded it, you know, on the joint, or that low weight bearing part of it, yeah, it just was, it didn't really, I suppose it didn't behave the way I expected it to, because at the Europeans, even though I played very little, my knee actually over the course of the tournament felt like it was getting a little bit better. And then of course the tournament in the Olympics, it actually got worse. So yeah, I strapped it, I took a few anti-inflammatories, painkillers, just to get through it. But yeah, I mean, I got through it, and that was the main thing for me. But it probably would have been nice if it felt a little bit better.
Yeah, we always want to feel better, don't we, when it comes to our bodies? Now, the COVID games were you know, throwing up a lot of curveballs for a lot of people. No one really knew how people were going to perform. You'd played a lot of these teams before in previous years, and no one really knew what people's training regimes were like. And we saw at the games lots of world records in different events. We saw outstanding performances by some of the favourites, but we also saw a lot of outstanding performances by some people that weren't expected to do so well. Was that the case in the field hockey for women? Were there a lot of upset games in your competition?
Yeah, I think like I spoke about earlier with India, you know, India probably did a lot better than any of the nations probably expected. You know, to get into the quarterfinal out of the group that we were in, and then to go on and beat Australia in the quarterfinal was huge. But deservedly so. You know, they were the better team, and they deserved to win that game, and they deserved to be in the semi-final. And you know, they took GB all the way out, and it was hard to. In the end, I kind of wanted India to do well, but yeah, there was some upsets. Nothing major, I suppose. Like, you know, it wasn't kind of Rio in 2016 when GB beat the Dutch. Like, that was massive and totally unexpected.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, good.
It wasn't upset, I don't think.
So what did you do after your competition? Were you allowed to go and see any of the other sports?
Yeah, we did actually manage to get to. We got to the athletics finals, which is really cool. So we saw the men's 100-meter final.
Mm.
We saw the Italian guy win the high jump, which is it was really cool to be there because he was so emotional and it meant so much to him. He had his cast from his leg that he had broken like a couple of months beforehand, and he had Tokyo 2020 written on it.
Yeah.
Kind of special to see that, to see what it meant to some of the athletes. And then we were sitting right in front of the women's triple jump, and that Rojas, I think her name is. Yeah, set a new world record, and she won gold. And she actually was staying in our building. The Venezuelans were in the same building as the Irish, and the next day I was going down to do my laundry, and the lift opened, and she walked in, and I was just like, looking up at her, and I was like, I saw you last night. Like, I saw you win. And she had the gold medal with her. And I was like, I saw you win that last night. I was like, congratulations. She hadn't a clue what I was saying because I was like, just words were coming out of my mouth. I was in such awe of her. Like, but I'm not said that much when I put the camera like this. So that was really cool. It was really cool to see that, and then to meet her after. So the athletics, in a normal COVID, you'd never get near that. That place would have been jam packed, and we're sitting there, 3 rows up from all the athletes, and it's just, it was incredible.
It must have been something special. You talked about Tramberi, the Italian high jumper. You talked about Rojas. They both won their final races in the Diamond League last night and took away €30,000 each. So they've had pretty good seasons. Pretty good seasons, both of them, with gold medals and a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow as well. So, they were special. 2 special people you just mentioned there. So you actually got to see a very, very good night in the Olympic Stadium. How did it feel, though, in terms of it being almost empty? Like, it must have been just weird, was it?
It was so weird because obviously, like, I know from watching the Olympics, like the athletics is the big. It's so big, and over the years, you'd always tune in to watch the men's 100-meter final, the women's 100-meter final. Like, they're just such big events, and to just kind of be there and like they did do it really cool where they like shut off all the lights and they had this kind of music for the runners when they entered for the men's 100-meter final. They entered and the whole place went dark, and then they put the spotlight on each individual athlete. I was really kind of like, oh God, this is cool. So they tried to make it. It just wasn't the same without the crowd there, I'd say. For that sport.
Yeah, it was much more made for television, I think, in terms of that whole light show and all the rest of it. So it seemed to do the trick on TV anyway. Okay, well that's good. You got to see some of the sports. Did you get out to see any of Tokyo in Japan?
No, we didn't. We weren't allowed. We were, kind of like prisoners locked up in the village. And you're only allowed out on day release for your matches and your training. So, no, we didn't, unfortunately. And it's a shame, just even the bus trips in and out, like Tokyo looked incredible. And the views from the village were so nice. And I think that probably helped a lot that you could kind of go down to the Olympic rings and just look out over onto the bay and the Rainbow Bridge. And, you look back the other way and you just see all the high-rise buildings of Tokyo. So it was a really cool location for the village, I think. But that was all we got to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, that's tremendous. It's a bit of a shame, isn't it? And I guess, as we've said before, this was an Olympics like no other, right? You just weren't able to do things that you normally would do in Olympic Games. But on the positive side, you've actually been to Olympics that there was no other Olympics like it, right? So you've had a very unique experience,
It was, you might not know any differences between Rio or Beijing or all those different Olympics that have happened previously, but I think everyone will remember the 2020 Tokyo Olympics purely because of the time that happened and circumstances that had happened. I think it'll certainly always be remembered by a lot of people, and it's kind of nice to say that you were at it. Although it would have been nice to experience a normal Olympics too, but
Well, you can come back for Paris and do another sport, Nicci, eh?
Yeah, I don't know about that, unless they have like what else I'd be interested in or good at. But I think my Olympic days are behind me now.
Anything that doesn't involve your knees, I think you'd be good at, Nicci.
Yeah, rowing.
Rowing or pistol shooting. You could probably be a good pistol shooter.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind trying that. Be into that.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks, on the Global Sports Channel. Nicci Daly's going to be representing Ireland in Paris at the pistol shooting range. Clay shooting, yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and a lot of people are interested in this, is, the Olympics are one thing for an athlete, but somebody who's, retiring from their sport, playing their last game for their country, and heading off back home from their only Olympic Games. How does one could it put all that into a bucket and emotionally deal with it? Tell us about what it's been like for you since you left Tokyo and headed off home, and all the cameras and the autograph wishes have gone and you've been left alone. How does all that feel?
I think I think I don't really know the answer. I think I'm still experiencing a little bit of it, of that post Olympic come down that I really didn't think about before I went, but it is real and it's a thing, and I'm experiencing it now. So, yeah, it's just so bizarre, Like all I seem to kind of go back to is how much I was thinking about Tokyo and for how long, and we qualified in 2019, and then obviously with the pandemic, it delayed things by a year, and it's just been all about Tokyo, all about this, and then you come home and it's just nothing, and it's almost like you feel a bit numb as well. It's like what just happened, and why does that not feel a bit different? And I don't really know what I should be feeling, but I just know that I just feel a bit numb or something. And yeah, it's also something that they've sacrificed so much for and given up their whole life for, and then you just come back and it's just nobody talks about it, or nobody. I don't know. I really am struggling to kind of even come to terms with it myself at the minute, and I haven't fully made sense of what I'm feeling or what the emotion is, but it does just feel like I just feel numb, essentially.
So I'm really interested to know what the sporting federations that you represented for 200 games of your career, and you represented your country overseas in many, many tournaments, and you're an Olympian for your country. What have they done to support you?
Well, they actually have been quite supportive. I actually have a meeting today with our sports psychologist, who would have worked with our team for the last kind of 2-3 years. And I worked quite closely with her on the lead up to Tokyo with, obviously like my injuries and my concerns and my worries and everything that I had on the build up to it. So I'm meeting her today for a post Olympic come down chat. And then the lead psychologist, so basically her boss, we just kind of filled out a survey the other day around it, and she wants to follow up with each athlete as well to see how they can kind of help support us, and if there's anything that we need that they can help us with. So there is, it is something that there's been a whole process around the Tokyo Games, and we do these kind of psychology workshops regularly at different stages throughout the cycle, and obviously the post Olympics is important to them more so than probably the lead up to the Olympics, to make sure that the athletes are dealing with whatever it is they're going through and the emotions, and how they can help them to transition, if it's a transition, or even getting back to sport if it's a struggle to kind of get back out and train and kind of get back to that routine again. And I know there's a lot of girls in the team who feel that way too. That it's not like they're retiring, but it's almost like, geez, that took out so much of me. And I suppose it's like part of me is feeling like, well, do I really feel fulfilled or something? It's, you kind of want to be careful what you say too, because you don't want to make it sound like, you didn't enjoy it or it wasn't everything you wanted it to be. But it's just more like, I suppose I never thought about what the after Tokyo would be like. I never thought about it at all. You know, it was just all about going there. And so to not have kind of really thought about it or tried to address it before you go is then harder to make sense of what you are feeling maybe afterwards. So I think it's going to be a bit of a process to figure it out and to be able to explain the whole thing and be able to then move on from it, but also feel something more than I'm feeling right now.
So how long are those services available to you for you to reach out and speak to those people that you're having a chat to today?
I don't think there's any specific time period on it. I think it's more like, you know, whatever you need until you need it. I certainly haven't been told, you know, you only have us for the next few weeks, so get in and use us. I don't think it's really like that. And you know, Sport Ireland wouldn't strike me as an organisation that would put that kind of pressure on an athlete. Like, they are very much about the athletes and they like to support them as much as they can. And I've certainly felt supported from the psychology team. In fact, without them this last few months, I don't know what I would have done. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, you've always got us as your friends here at the Global Sports Channel, and all of our audience that have met you had fantastic feedback about your previous show that you did with us, and I know that we're going to get the same feedback on this show, so you can always know that you've got friends over here in the Global Sports Channel to have a chat to anytime you want to. Come back and have a chat. But I know that I've got everybody saying in my ear at the moment, they're saying, ask her what she's going to do now, what she's going to do next. So what are you going to do next, Nicci? What's the plans?
Mark, that's a loaded question. I just, how long have you got? Again, it's not something that I have the answer to, but there's definitely, you know, certain projects that I'm involved in at the minute that I'm, you know, passionate about and I want to kind of keep working on. But as to what my ultimate role will be, I'm not 100% sure yet, and I'm kind of allowing myself time to figure that out and allowing the process of my career and, you know, the Olympic experience to be dealt with first before I try and deal with anything else in my life. So but it's, you know, I've got plenty of options and opportunities, I think, which is great. And yeah, it's just about kind of figuring it all out and making sure I don't put myself under too much pressure to do anything that it's too much out of me.
That sounds like a very sound strategy. So I'll tell you what we're going to have to do, Nicci, is we're going to have to get you back for the trilogy, the third episode, because everybody's going to want to know what you've moved on to later on. And when you're ready to do that, we'd love to have you back again on the show to talk to people about life after professional sport and what you're going to be doing next.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back, and yeah, it'd be great once I know to be able to tell everyone.
Well, that's fantastic. Listen, thank you very much for joining me today and all of our audience here at the Global Sports Channel. It's been lovely hearing about your Olympic experience, a one-off Olympic experience with COVID-19 in Tokyo. And again, congratulations on a wonderful career as a field hockey player representing your fantastic country of Ireland. And look forward to chatting to you again, Nicci.